So I sat at my desk for quite a bit debating how I was going to do this cold open. I thought perhaps I could open up by discussing toxic fandoms, or maybe I could talk about ideology and how it grows and changes over time. Humans are products of their environment, all that. But honestly, let's just be serious. A lot of people do not like Rossiu from Gurren Lagann. Not to say that he appears on everyone's most hated anime characters ever lists, but it certainly does seem like the fandom has a general bias against him. Given the events of the show, that's understandable. Now, I'm not going to act like my opinion is the right one, and it's the only one you should listen to, but I tend to disagree with the notion of disliking Rossiu. I think this character is not only nuanced and interesting, but even deserving of forgiveness from both the characters and the fans. So I want everyone to put down their pitchforks for just a little bit and listen to me. If nobody else is going to stick up for him, I will. Let's talk about Rossiu. Firstly, it's important to understand why people hate Rossiu, and that ultimately stems from his actions in the adult arc. It's very apparent that Rossiu's mentality and ideologies are different than that of most of Team Daiguren, most of all its leader Simone. I did a comparison a while ago in a video of idealism versus realism, but one, I personally don't think that video meets my current standards, and two, there's a lot more to it than just that. Gurren Lagann, as well as most of its cast, poses a way of thinking that's very anti-establishment, hinging almost on libertarianism. And to prove that, let's look at the villains. Both Lord Genome and the Anti-Spirals, though different in many ways, are also very similar. They restrict and take away freedoms for the sake of what they consider the safest status quo, keeping the citizens of Earth, and later the universe, suppressed for their own good. They aren't necessarily dictators, as their twisted sense of morality is ultimately what drives them. And they both do truly believe they are on the correct side, and that suppressing everyone's freedoms will lead to a good, continued existence. The main characters are the ones who oppose them, as they believe the personal freedoms of people are more important. They wish to live in a world with no walls, where the sky is not their enemy. Intelligent beings should be allowed to flourish and coincide, building onto a better tomorrow as they explore and discover more portions of the universe. It is a person's right to live freely. Then there's Rossiu. His way of thinking is often diverted away from the more idealistic and hopeful mentality of his peers. While he did of course agree to strip away the walls from humanity by going above ground with Kamina and the gang, it's clear that Rossiu still thinks there should be some level of order, at least to a certain extent. He's the one who adapts to the new government the easiest out of everyone, even embracing it. But that's not why people dislike him. It's because he's so quick to turn against his friend Simone and to use him as a political scapegoat. It's a huge shock of the arc when Simone not only gets arrested, but is also sentenced to death, by Rossiu no less. Rossiu also seems to give up on Team Daiguren's attitude when it comes to saving the people of Earth, abandoning many to preserve the species. It's these two major actions, coupled with his serious and political demeanor, that made him a target for fans. But here's the thing. Not only are these actions telegraphed pretty well by the show, but they also work great with Rossiu and Simone's character arcs, and though his actions seem questionable, Rossiu has the best intentions. From the beginning, Rossiu was always set up to be different from the others. He is the only character not to join Team Daiguren because of either Kamina or Simone's influence. Being from a Dai village, he knew how cruel the world could be. They were often low on food and supplies, and lacked the advancements other villages had, like electricity. He and the others had to manage, and their village elder, Father Magi, came up with a system where the population would not exceed 100. If it ever did, they'd send someone to the surface. And his influence is what Rossiu pulls from, a level of utilitarianism that the other members of Team Daiguren automatically disagreed with, especially Kamina. One could argue Gimme and Dari might have also been influenced, but they were too young to fully understand, and the two of them become a lot more conflicted as they grow older in the adult arc. Rossiu, however, understood not only the truth, but also was old enough to understand the want for freedom as well as the consequences that come from the team's exploits. By following Kamina, it's clear that he believes in their dreams to an extent, but he's also more skeptical and analytical due to his harsh upbringings, and it's also possible he went to the surface because he was simply curious and wanted to know more about the world. These traits carry over as Rossiu became an adult, working behind the scenes to discover more of the secrets of the universe. He's quick to embrace the new world because he's used to some level of order, and that's all fine and dandy. But again, people hate him because he betrayed Simone, his friend. How could he do such a thing? His actions in a bubble seem quite harsh and unjustified. But we know the context, so we're not looking at this in a bubble. His actions not only make sense for the kind of person he is, but they are also for the good of humanity. Much as Father Magi felt it necessary to send people to the surface for the good of everyone else, Rossiu feels that Simone must be dealt with in a similar fashion. In this case, it's to regain the people's trust so they can better fight the anti-spirals. While he is quick to bring death into the courtroom, I don't think Rossiu made that decision lightly. Once they find out how devastating the moon's impact will truly be, Rossiu realizes that sacrifices might be necessary. He cannot save everyone with the resources at his disposal, and this clearly has an effect on his psyche. Every action he takes is not only extremely difficult, so much so that very few people could honestly make them, but it weighs heavily on him. It's clear that he loses a lot of sleep due to the bags under his eyes, and he often has trouble maintaining his composure. But he views all of this as necessary. His actions, while harsh, are very utilitarian. The suffering is for the benefit of the future, and that means these actions are justified. And ultimately, his plan fails, because he's fighting against a being that logic cannot defeat. He made all the right calls, but it didn't matter. The very person he prosecuted saves the day. This makes him believe that he's committed a truly heinous sin, betraying the trust of the people he cares about for nothing, so it must be paid in blood. And this is why I think Rossiu deserves forgiveness, because he understands the wrongs he's committed, even if they were for the right reasons. He finally cracked after so much pressure. Rossiu's only human after all, but Simone and Kinone come to his aid, offering advice to snap him out of it, starting off with that very famous punch. And I do think it has an effect. Rossiu says to Kinone that he wants to feel the weight of a human life. Because he was so willing to sacrifice many, he wants to put that into perspective, to feel at least a little bit of what his decisions would have taken away. I'm not saying I agree with what Rossiu did. I'm saying I understand why he did it. Truth is, he made very tough decisions under serious stress based on his own experiences and beliefs. In many ways, he repeated history by mimicking Father Magi. Everything he did was for the future, for the people, wrong actions for the right reasons. And afterward, he not only showed remorse for these actions, but a willingness to learn and move forward. It shows he's a very complex and evolving character, much like everyone else. And while the anger against him is understandable, I think he doesn't deserve it. He's not a bad person. The mecha genre is full of characters who are truly horrible people. There are too many to choose from that are fully deserving of all the hate that is constantly thrown at them. But Rossiu does not belong in that category. He's simply a man who tried his best, and I think that should be recognized and appreciated. So, can we put the pitchforks down now, please? I'm not saying you need to love Rossiu, but at least understand what the show is doing with this character, why he did what he did, and why, in my opinion, I do think he deserves at least a little bit of forgiveness. He's a really good character, and ultimately, I think he finally learned his lesson at the end. He understood the weight of a human life. If you guys enjoyed this video, please go ahead and click that subscribe button. Also make sure to click the bell so that way you're notified for future videos. Thank you, and I'll see you guys next time.